For most of the 20th century, more than 200,000 public telephones lined the streets of New York, from Wall Street to Harlem, from the Bronx to the Battery. In fact, by the 1970s, payphones were everywhere, serving as the city's lifeline through blackouts, blizzards, and everyday moments alike. But as decades passed, those familiar glass boxes began to disappear. So what happened to them? And what, if anything, remains today? Stay tuned to find out as we uncover the story of New York's lost phone booths. I'm your host, Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History. Let's go back to the start, 1876, when Alexander Graham Bell filed the first successful patent for the telephone, transforming electric signals into speech. The world suddenly had a new way to connect, but in the beginning, it was a luxury for the rich and elite. You see, early telephones were so expensive that they were typically only owned by private businesses. Anyhow, for the working class, long-distance communication still meant telegrams and patience. Though that changed in 1889 when an inventor from Hartford, Connecticut, William Gray, grew frustrated after failing to find a public telephone to summon help for his ailing wife. Determined to resolve that kind of problem, he invented the world's first coin-operated payphone, installed at the Hartford Bank that same year. And then, a year later, he founded the Gray Telephone Pay Station Company, building simple metal devices that accepted coins and connected directly to an operator. His invention democratized communication, transforming the telephone from a household privilege into a public service. By the 1890s, these payphones were installed in wooden cabinets, rudimentary phone booths, offering privacy from the noise of the street. In New York, the earliest examples of such phones appeared in hotels and train stations, allowing travelers to call home before boarding or after their arrival. But the real evolution came with the spread of the Bell system, when AT&T absorbed Western Electric and later integrated Gray's design. They standardized the booth, a small enclosure of wood or metal, often with a folding door, a seat, or a single dim light. For the people of the time, the sound of that door clicking shut became as familiar as a heartbeat. By the early 20th century, these booths were multiplying like crazy. In cities like New York, adopted them as civic infrastructure, visible proof that modernity had finally arrived. And in an age before radio and television, the phone booth represented speed, privacy, and the thrill of instant connection. Now, across the Atlantic, Britain introduced the iconic red phone booths in the 1920s, and America followed suit, though with a simpler glass and aluminum solution. By the 1930s, that outdoor booth had become a fixture of the American city. Back in New York, they appeared along Broadway, outside hotels, and beside newsstands. And just like that, the telephone booth had officially entered the modern world. World War II pushed communication into overdrive. Across America, companies like AT&T expanded their networks so soldiers could call home from barracks and train stations. After the war, returning veterans brought with them a deep appreciation for connection. New York responded by wiring itself even further. By the 1950s, the payphone was a symbol of both progress and basic accessibility. You could call for help, a cab, or a friend, all for the price of a nickel. The booths were everywhere, on street corners, in department stores, inside subway stations, and even in schools. Meaning, for many New Yorkers who still couldn't afford a private phone, there was a lifeline. At its peak, New York hosted more than 200,000 active payphones, each linked to the city's dense network of underground cables. A nickel bought you 5 minutes of local talk time, and operators handled long-distance requests, and if your call failed, the machine would neatly return your coin through a metal slot. The logistics were also interesting, as technicians from the New York Telephone Company routinely needed to empty the locked coin boxes, hauling out small fortunes in change every week. Some booths were so heavily used that they had to be serviced daily. And in a city so congested, payphones also offered something rare: privacy. Unregistered numbers and untraceable lines made them perfect for both confidential conversations and occasionally, you guessed it, criminal ones, a fact that authorities figured out fast. In 1967, FBI agents illegally wiretapped a public phone used by a gambler named Charles Katz. This event led to a landmark Supreme Court case, Katz versus the United States. The ruling redefined privacy rights, declaring that the Fourth Amendment protects people, not places, and forbade unwarranted surveillance of public phones. So this is why the Soprano guys were always using payphones. They could not legally be bugged. So between the law-abiding citizens and criminals, by the 1970s, payphones had become a part of New York's identity. They appeared in films like Taxi Driver or Superman, where Clark Kent's lightning-fast costume change was made in a booth. These appearances in popular culture made them an icon. And yet, while the world changed around them, the payphones stayed remarkably consistent, though that would not remain the case forever, as new technology was about to change the world in ways that no one could imagine. By the late 1980s, a new kind of mobility was emerging. Pagers allowed people to reach anyone, anywhere, and at any time, causing a temporary spike in payphone use. However, that would change with the arrival of the cell phone, a bulky, expensive novelty at first, but one that freed communication from its last tether. In 1983, Motorola released the first handheld commercial phone. At the time, a single call could cost $1 a minute. Payphones still had that advantage of affordability and availability, meaning even those with cell phones still used the payphone, but the numbers were dwindling. And then, as technology improved and costs dropped, the writing was on the wall, or should I say, on the glass. Maintenance grew expensive. Vandalism was consistent. Graffiti-covered booths, receivers went missing, and entire panels of glass were shattered and unrepaired. And as if overnight, those once gleaming symbols of connectivity became grimy, unreliable relics. By the mid-1990s, the number of active phone booths in New York had fallen by half. A new generation of portable devices, Blackberries, flip phones, and then smartphones, made the payphones outright obsolete. By 2010, nearly 90% of Americans owned a cell phone. And in a city where time is money, few were willing to wait in line for a dial tone. Still, for a while, people couldn't really imagine removing the booths. They were such a part of society, and hence they remained half-forgotten monuments to an analog past. Though by 2014, an unexpected scandal hastened their demise. That year, CBS News reported that hundreds of payphone enclosures across New York had been fitted with hidden Bluetooth beacons, small devices that tracked nearby cell phones to harvest advertising data. This revelation infuriated privacy advocates and the public alike. The unthinkable had happened, and in the worst way and to the worst scale, phone booths became a tool for surveillance. With that in mind, the following year the city unveiled its official replacement, LinkNYC. These sleek, 10-foot-tall digital kiosks offered free Wi-Fi, phone calls, USB charging, and advertising displays. They were modern, efficient, and above all, connected. And so it was. One by one, workers arrived with cranes and cutting tools, unbolting decades of history from the sidewalk. Glass panels shattered as booths were lifted onto trucks and driven away. Some were sold for scraps, others were donated to museums or repurposed as art installations. A few lucky survivors were preserved by collectors, restored, rewired, and displayed in lofts or tech museums. And one iconic row of phones at West End Avenue was relocated to the Museum of the City of New York. In contrast, others were auctioned online, fetching surprising sums of money from nostalgic buyers. Though we shouldn't get carried away. The majority met a much quieter fate. They were stacked in municipal storage lots in Queens or shipped to recycling centers, with their metal and plastics stripped for parts. In May of 2022, the final freestanding payphone in Manhattan, a silver and blue relic at 7th Avenue and 50th, was removed by a crane. Crowds gathered, cameras rolled, and the city's commissioner of technology declared, quote, "This is truly the end of an era." New York's last public payphone didn't just disappear, it was retired. Today, only a few payphones remain in New York, 4 to be exact, and each is preserved as a historic display. In the Museum of the City of New York, visitors can still step inside one, lift the receiver, and hear the faint buzz of a live dial tone, though their traces also remain throughout the city. If you walk the streets of Manhattan, you can see outlines where phone booths once were. Sealed conduit holes in pavement, and the occasional metal pedestal rising from a forgotten sidewalk. Not to mention, LinkNYC kiosks now occupy many phone booths' former space. These taller, faster, and silent equivalents have all but replaced the world we once know. For nearly a century, payphones were New York's pulse, and their disappearance marked more than the death of a technology. It was the end of a shared urban ritual. Still, their legacy lingers in art, architecture, and the city's collective memory. And it warrants mentioning here that every digital call from a public kiosk owes something to those small glass boxes that once lined the avenues. So next time you pass a corner where one used to stand, stop for a moment. Listen. You might still catch the echo of coins falling, a receiver clicking into place, or someone saying something like, "I thank you all for watching, and until next time, this is Ryan Socash, signing off."